Thank you, Erin, for the welcome. Yeah, and thank you to our panelists. Really excited to have you all here. We're just handing over hosting capability from Erin to Avery. So we'll have the slides back up in a minute. But just wanted to say hello. Like, and there I am on screen. It's always very funny to see my picture there.
Oh, did you want to do like a short intro of yourself, or do you just want to go to the next slide?
Yeah. I think, is this the beginning, Avery?
Yeah, I believe so, of all the intro slides.
Okay, perfect. I feel like Erin already told everybody all about me. But the other thing I'll be doing today is helping to moderate the panel with Avery. And very excited because we are part of the education component of FASTER, which has tech in color. We have another group called FUNKtion, where we're working with both through 12 and also college students, connecting them with professionals, especially Filipino professionals and professionals of color in the tech industry, hoping to inspire them to follow a career and connect with one of you professionals to get more information and guidance and mentorship. So Avery, next slide. Okay, wonderful. And just double checking, whose slide is this? Is this Gina? Oh, Gina, I can't hear you. Are you on mute? Okay.
It's difficult to hear your audio at the moment.
Gina, you want to check your audio one more time? You can also click on your microphone and see if it's connected to either your headset or to your system. I think Gina, it's still, maybe try if you disconnect your head. Are you on a headset? I'm not sure if you're on a headset. Can you hear panelists or Avery? Can you hear Gina? Okay, I wasn't sure if it's my microphone, so I wanted to double check. Okay, yeah, it's very, very, very low, Gina.
It's a little bit better now, I think.
Okay, she's gonna double check the microphone.
How about now?
A little bit better. Try say one more thing.
Testing, are you able to hear me?
Yes, much better.
Sorry, I don't know what setting I had, but yes, this is my slide. I am Gina. So should I just go ahead and introduce myself?
Yes, if you can. Go ahead, Professor Martinez.
All right. Well, so I'm Gina Martinez. I currently teach at Lewis University, and this slide is giving you kind of my life story, I guess. I actually grew up in the Philippines. So as you can see there in the upper left, that's my picture from my high school graduation. I graduated in high school in the Philippines, and back there, right now they've changed it now. But when I graduated, you graduate from high school at 16, because we only had, like K to 10 at that time. And so when I came here, I was 16 and I was ready to go to college. So I went to my undergrad, pursued my undergraduate degree in computer engineering at University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. After that, I went to Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago to work on my master's in computer engineering. And then after that, I needed more school, and so I decided to go for my PhD. And I was doing that all my graduate degrees while also working full time. at a software company. If you have heard of Install Shield, they're not Install Shield anymore. They're part of another company now. But while working there, I was pursuing my PhD. This time in electrical engineering. That's also from Illinois Institute of Technology. And then after that, I went on to, academia, became an assistant professor at Lewis University that is located in Romeoville, Illinois. It's a private Catholic college. And the picture that you see there on the lower right is with some of my students. And they are all taller than me, aside from that one kid who's a younger brother of one of my students. But yeah, and there's also not a whole lot of diversity, as you can see there. So that's something that I definitely hope that will be addressed in the future. And then what you see there in the middle, right in the middle picture at the bottom is, I guess, me teaching some of my students. Like I say, we are liberal arts college, and so the engineering program is actually pretty new, and I led the effort of the university for pursuing ABA accreditation for our computer engineering program, and we just got that earlier this year, and so they made like a whole press conference about it, and so that was a kind of a photo op that they did with me in my classroom. As far as personal interests, I like to dance, but me and my husband, we have a quid pro quo. He likes fishing, and so I go fishing with him, and he goes dancing with me, and so it has worked so far. So my two interests and things that I do in my free time, I guess, is fishing and farm dancing. So that's me.
Thank you.
Oh, Avery, can you just go back for a second?
Sorry. Yeah.
We'll just show her handles. So do you want to talk about your handles?
I wasn't sure if this slide, there's really not much here, really, just my contact information. If you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is probably the best way. My page is there, and just send me a connection request, and I'd be happy to get connected.
Awesome. Thank you, Professor Martinez. Appreciate it. Very exciting. And I put in the chat that we do need to help you increase the number of women in your program. So let's work together to start recruiting, because that will be cool. Then you'll have more people who are the same size as you.
Size of the kid.
Yes, exactly. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your introduction. And then we'll save questions for later after all the panelists introduce themselves. And I'll turn it over to Avery to introduce our next panelist.
Hi, so I'm Luz Ann. I work as a software engineer at Amazon, and I graduated from UC San Diego with a degree in electrical engineering. And while I was in college, I was very involved in our Filipino org, which was called KP. I even choreographed a modern tinikling dance to the song Every Time You Touch by Cascada for our culture show one year. And that was a really fun experience. I actually really love tinikling. But on the more academic side, even though I was an electrical engineering major, I realized that I wasn't super interested in it, but I was interested in computer science. So I started to take more CS classes, and I actually got an internship at an Amazon team in Seattle. And I loved Seattle, I loved my internship. And at the end of my internship, I was given a return offer to come back on an Alexa team in the Bay Area. So I'm in San Jose right now. And my background is just the basic San Francisco Zoom. Yes, I've been working at Amazon for the past 2 years after I graduated, and at Amazon, I'm involved with Filipinos at Amazon, and I'm working with them to build up our external outreach program. So hopefully partnering with some universities and planning some events with them. And outside of work, I also volunteer as an advisor for with a program called Built by Girls. So that pairs professionals with high school and college students who are interested in careers in tech. And I also co-teach an AP Computer Science program at or AP Computer Science class at Santa Clara High School. And that's been really fun, but also a lot of work. Teaching is a lot of work. I don't know how they do it. So hats off to all teachers and all professors. And that's my dog Yogi at the bottom. I had to include him because I love him. And in my free time, I like to play Animal Crossing. So on the left is me in Animal Crossing, which pretty much looks exactly like me in person. And I also love hip hop dancing.
Awesome. Thank you, Luz Ann. I don't know how you find the time to do dancing and be a doggy mama and work with Built by Girls, and so amazing. Thank you so much for your introduction, and hope we can talk more and ask you more questions about all the programs that you're working with. Plus, you'll have to show us a video of your hip hop dancing. Definitely. I put it in the chat that I used to dance modern many, many years ago, and we danced to Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation. So that kind of tells you how old I am. Okay, Avery, next slide. And next we have Adrienne Braganza Tacke. I don't know if I said that right. Not with a Filipino accent, definitely.
It's good. It's good enough. I think the next slide is where it should have been inversed, but if you could go to the next slide. Thank you. So as Charity mentioned, I'm Adrienne Braganza Tacke, and I'm a software engineer and developer advocate for MongoDB currently. But before that, I spent a lot of my time mainly as a software engineer here in Las Vegas. And one thing I really like to point out is that this is not something that I knew that I wanted to do until around college. So something that I always hear a lot of the time is, you know, people start coding at like 6 years old or 7 years old, and they started doing it since they were very young. And I did not know that I wanted to do this until college. All I knew is that I did not want to become a nurse. That's the only thing I knew for sure. So hopefully we can talk more about that later on in the questions. But some of the other things that I'm very proud of, I only got to this position as a developer advocate at MongoDB because, as you see in the largest picture here, that was my very, very first technical talk. And I only kind of did that as a career goal for myself. I said, what does it take to get on the stage and actually give a talk at one of these tech conferences? And I learned, I applied to as many conferences as I could. And unknowingly and stressfully enough, I got accepted to 7 the first year. And after I did this first talk pictured here, I actually loved it so much that I quit my last job just to be able to pursue the remaining talking events that I had. And it was only through this particular mini road trip that MongoDB came out and reached out to me and said, hey, we actually have a job doing what you're doing. I had no idea that this was even something you could get paid for. So I can go a little bit more into that as well. The other thing that I'm extremely proud of, other than representing Filipinas as a speaker in the regular speaker circuit, is I wrote a book called Coding for Kids Python. That was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life because I did it while I was working full-time as a software engineer at my last job. So not only did I have deadlines and all those other things during the day, when I came home, it's back to the second job, which was writing this book. It was very difficult. It took a lot of rewrites and really stretched my brain to be able to write this in a way that's engaging and makes sense to children. But in the end, it was totally worth it. I still see pictures like this. People tag me all the time on social media saying, I got your book for my kid. And it always makes me extremely happy to see, especially when it's in the hands of a little girl. So something I'm super, super proud of. And other than that, I'm also kind of everywhere. I've done LinkedIn learning courses. I've done talks everywhere. And I'm now writing content for MongoDB. So a big part of who I am and what I do now is teaching content to others and hopefully showing that women can be in this space, especially Filipino women, that there's another path other than the medical field. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Adrienne. That was awesome. I actually was pre-med myself and somehow I got into tech. So I think all of us start as somehow pre-med, pre-health, pre law, right? And somehow we all find ourselves here. And I love this community because we all have a journey. So thank you for sharing that. Avery, next slide. Awesome. Okay. Yeah.
Hello. Can everyone?
Hello. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you so much for having me today. I don't know if you guys can all hear me well enough, right?
Yeah, I'm
Well,
mesmerized by your moving arrows. I love it.
I was taught actually maybe I'll add the whole how I add gifts to all of my presentations part in one of these stages, but um, that's another story. I was taught that professionally to do this. Um, So I guess I'll start. I conveniently did a timeline here. I did Girls Who Code in 2012. I was part of like the first kind of guinea pig class where it was like 19 of us. This is like the photo that we have here is like a very fancy nonprofit event where we're like, hey, we learned a lot, so give us money now and help us expand. And that was, thank God, really successful because we were able to teach, like have ongoing classes. To this day, there are a ton of Girls Who Code classes around. I don't know internationally, but I'm pretty sure around the US and Canada right now. So as part of that first class, and that was like a super life-changing experience for me. I took AP computer science in high school, and then I was the only girl in my class. That didn't really change when I went to college, but I hated it. And I was gonna like work at Starbucks that summer. And my mom is a housekeeper, and the family that she works for, their son is like a software engineer. And they were like, you should like do this program, even though it was just starting and nobody really knew that much about it. But I applied, and it ended up like completely changing my life. So I interned at these couple places afterwards, which was super fun because especially for all the students that are in the call right now, you should definitely, even if you don't know if you like tech, definitely apply to internships because you never know. I was still kind of hesitant about, having a career in computer science at all. But internships really changed my mind. I learned in like the bottom right corner where it says summer interns is where I learned that you must always put GIFs in your presentations. This was my internship at Tumblr, and that is David Karp introducing us, which was like a very big starstruck moment for me because I used to like be on Tumblr all the time, and well, I still am on Tumblr all the time because I currently work there. But that was like the first time seeing David Karp in real life and being like completely starstruck. And then I graduated from Rutgers. I majored in computer science in 2018. And then the GIF that you see me now on the unicycle was my first day starting full-time at Tumblr. And I currently work there today. I'm based in Brooklyn, and I'm from Jersey City originally.
Awesome, Diana. Can you explain the last picture with the unicycle?
What
was that?
Oh my God, I don't know why I didn't explain that. That must have been.
I'm like, that's really cool. Is that you?
It is me. So when you first start working at Tumblr, you get asked they do like a first interview, or like we really want to know who you are personally. And one of the things that I said in my interview was like, oh, I learned how to unicycle in like 6th grade because I went to this weird school that taught it. So that's really the only reason why I know a unicycle. And the CEO brought out like this mini unicycle that they bought for like $20 on Amazon, and was like, prove it. And I was like, thank God I wasn't wearing a skirt that day. Those are shorts that you all see there. But yeah.
That's awesome that they had a unicycle and that you actually rode it.
It actually broke too. It broke right. Yeah. Don't buy $20 unicycles from Amazon.
I hope we don't have the Amazon people here. Do we have the Amazon people here?
Oh, right.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah.
It's okay. You guys didn't make it. You just helped sell it. Okay. Awesome. Okay. And next slide, Avery. I think we're going to go into
I
your
believe that's
handles.
all the intro. Yeah.
Yeah, so contact Diana. Here are all her handles. I'm definitely going to contact you. I don't know how to ride a unicycle, so I might ask you for unicycle riding lessons. So that would be kind of cool. We should do
Right.
yeah, a little faster training on that. Awesome. Erin, do you want to take over Q&A? Oh, we can't hear you. Oh, okay. I think we're all having microphone issues. Hold on, she's gonna join probably on her other computer. Okay, but that's okay. We can start Q&A now if you want. So I do have a question for all of you. Being women
you hear me
who
now?
are, oh yes, I can hear you now.
Sorry,
Awesome.
it was on mute. And then our Faster Pros, I'm so sorry. Our other track still wants to convene. And I will tell you this right now, if anyone else is running a Zoom, you can't run 2 Zooms at the same time. I was able to start both and it wouldn't let me do either.
Oh, you can
Yeah, so it wasn't booked for 2 o'clock because we started early. So we were at 1:30. That's why I was able to stream on Facebook, but I couldn't actually start theirs at all. They had less people, so it was okay. But this is just for future reference. So I'm like trying to apologize to them right now. They're like, we prepared it and we still want to do it. I'm like, I actually just can't. It's a weird issue because even though we have a paid account and you can enable this so that you have multiple ones, just yeah. So I hate
Oh, it
Zoom
didn't work.
and I really
Oh,
want to
okay.
switch to what was it, the person from Cisco, WebEx, because it's just
So
it's a
Cisco, we should get
freaking
our
nightmare.
Cisco contacts to connect us.
I asked them for the Filipino discount. They never emailed me back, and I was like, "Come on, really?" Because this is just it's torture. We've a lot of people have said to use Hopin or other things, and I think all of our board, between myself and Ian, our market director, we fought with each other to basically. I was like, "Well, we could pay $15,000 for software like Adobe and embed everything in the site, and then have live chat bots so that there's zero sound issues." So sorry, I wasn't talking not just because of the sound, because I'm trying to apologize to them that they can't. So in the future, just for future reference, Faster Pros and Education have to be 2 separate tracks. They can't be at the same time. So as much as I hate 8-hour conferences, they're there for a reason. And it's just because we can't do both. I've literally had to divide my time like into 5, and it's literally impossible. So it's just for anyone, because I know some of you do stream, you can't do it. I'm trying really hard to do that. The questions, Avery, can you actually pop open the doc, because we have a number of questions there, and then some of the students that are in the chat, you can also ask questions. Everything is pre-prepared right there. I just need to take care of this real quick. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm actually going to ask my question now. So since you're all Pinay's in tech, were you ever discouraged? I know some of you mentioned it a little bit. Were you ever discouraged from going into tech? Especially, I know for me, I work with a lot of tech companies. I'm in health and safety. And sometimes I feel that imposter syndrome. So wanted to ask, how did you overcome that to continue? Because from what I see, there are a lot of Pinays and also Filipinos in general who they feel that and then they just stop and they think it's not for me, right? They don't have a sponsor, they don't have a mentor, they don't have a guide. And I think sometimes, it's good to know that someone else has been through it before. So do you have any advice for that?
Well, I guess I could go first. Well, the first thing I want to say is I still feel that it's a work in progress. I feel like that, all the time. And yeah, I mean, not all, yeah. So, and I think every time I feel that, I just, I guess the most important advice that I can give is that you're not alone. There's pretty much, there's so many other women, especially women of color, who feel that way. And we just have to believe in ourselves. I know that sounds cliche, but not let others' opinions change what you know about yourself. You know that you know your stuff and you know what you can do. And there's always going to be times where you feel like you are inadequate, and it's okay to feel that way. The important thing is that, you overcome it, and also just knowing that you're not alone in feeling that way, I think really helps a lot.
Thank you, Gina. Anyone else want to answer or provide an answer? You guys are like, she said it all. I know for me, I'm going to tell you an example that happened to me this last month. I was chosen for my company. It's a global company, and out of 5,000 employees, they chose like 92 like rising leaders in the company, right, to go through an evaluation session to be mentored to become a partner in the organization, which is like vice president level in the organization. When I attended the session, there were like, no Filipinos. I was the only Pinay, and the other people of color, there were a few, but they were like Hispanic, but they were from Latin America, right? So from the United States, almost everybody was white. And I remember I got put into a panel or a group of 5 other people. They were all white. And then there was me. And I know during our group sessions, I noticed that I was doing a lot of thinking, like, okay, don't be too bold because they think you're, you're kind of bitchy, or don't be too quiet because they'll think you're too meek. Like I was doing all this thought process in my head of how do I act and how do I talk, and don't be disrespectful, but you have to show that you have leadership, right? And I was thinking, I bet you they don't even think about this. These things don't go through their head, right? And I'm like, oh my God. And it was really funny because at the end of the day, they had this evaluation session and asked me how I felt about it. And I told them I was doing a lot of thinking. And luckily, I had someone, a person of color, who was evaluating me and asking me how I did. And I explained that. And they're like, oh, yeah, I understand. Because they were a person of color too. But if I had an evaluator who was white, I couldn't tell them that. Right. I don't think they would understand. But I don't know if some of you go through things like that when you're with maybe white peers or people who are not people of color, having to decide on how you act, and just so much about yourself that you have to carry to overcome some of these other tendencies we have as a Pinay.
Yeah. I guess I'll jump in again. I just kind of sharing a past experience. In university, everything has to be done by committees. If you want to do something, a committee has to be formed. Oftentimes, if you want to do something, a committee has to be formed to form a committee, and that committee forms another committee. It's this whole process. But every time we hire someone new, a search committee has to be formed, and they have these requirements of someone from this department and this department. And a couple times I have definitely felt like I've been added there for diversity purposes, because everyone else was, like older white men. And I walk in the room, I'm like, yeah, I'm a diversity token here. But so when that happens, I do feel the pressure to contribute, because you feel like you're different and you don't want to be already be different and not say anything, and not be able to contribute anything. You also feel the pressure to, they talk with each other and sharing their opinions, and you want to prove yourself that you belong there, because you already feel that, you're kind of the one that's different in that group. And so you want to kind of show that you belong there. So I definitely felt that pressure before. Like I say, I think even in those situations, just kind of go with it. Even if you were added there for diversity purposes, the benefits of that is there's also benefits of that, right? There's a reason why they want a search committee to be diverse, so that they can hear a diversity of opinion from from the perspective of other cultures, of other genders. So there's a reason why they want diversity there. It's not just to to kind of look good, that there's it's a diverse panel. So take advantage of what good you can do by being part of a group that would have been not diverse at all if you weren't there.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Gina, for sharing. Adrienne or Diana or Luz Ann, do you have anything else to add to that? I feel like the younger Pinays are just so much bolder. Like you probably don't have these issues that we have.
I can speak to some of that. So the imposter syndrome, like everyone has mentioned, it's gonna be there, but that's normal. It exists even until now. I can tell personally how I overcame some of those things because it was the same even when I was in college. When I was in college, I was the only girl in those classes. I was the only one who was in a lot of these events that was geared towards engineering or STEM in general. So absolutely, it's normal to feel like, am I supposed to be here? Do I belong? Because you feel like you're the only one there. But the way that I approached it, especially as I started my first job and started advancing in my career, was it was almost like I wanted to prove to the people who underestimated me that they should not have underestimated me. And that's something that has kept me going. There are several stories. There's from when I had a recruiter call me asking about my experience for a programmer position. And she was describing a position more towards someone who created like pamphlets or brochures, like programmer, literal programmer. And I told her, well, I was sharing my experience in software. And she goes, oh no, honey, that job is for the men. And I absolutely was like, that's not, no, thank you, but no, thank you. I'm not interested. And yes, I was upset, but it's like I used that energy to fuel myself to say, I'm not going to have this happen again. I'm not going to be mistaken for something like this. It's the same when I was a junior .NET developer, maybe because I was young, I'm short, you know, Pinays are like one height. And so I was short, I was young, I was a junior .NET dev, but I knew what I was talking about. And whenever we would get into conversations discussing architectural decisions, something of our next sprint, I'd always have older white men who are like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. And I go, actually, I do know what I'm talking about. But, you know, it takes a while to get there. I absolutely was not at that age and at that point in my career. I was thinking it, but I was not like, I'm going to say it, you know, I'm going to say it in my own way. But I was still terrified. I didn't feel like stepping up and calling that person out and bringing out alternative solutions in those. So it takes some time, but I think the more that you do it, the easier that it gets. So the first time that I stood up and said, nope, these are the reasons why this solution is not as great as this solution, and explain my case, you feel like you've earned that spot. And it's the same when I started going to these tech conferences. I was absolutely afraid to go up and speak to a bunch of people who I thought who are way more, involved, knew way more than me, senior engineers, CTOs, all these people in the crowd. And I'm like, why would they want to listen to me? But in the end, after doing my first talk and explaining it, there were people who came up to me and said, thank you for explaining it the way that you did, because now I finally understand. So if you just remember that there will be moments that you're scared, but the more that you put yourself out there, and if you do the approach I did, which worked for me, which was try to use that as fuel to say, no, you're absolutely wrong. I'm going to show you why you're wrong. And you kind of earn that confidence as you go through these kind of steps in your career. So that's something I'd love to remind everyone about, is that it's completely okay. Even at this point in my career, I still feel that sometimes, but I continue to grow because of putting myself out there. And that's how I have that confidence now to draw from.
Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing. I feel that way all the time when I speak. It's like, do I really know what I'm talking about? I get all the in my head space. And I think you do. You have to just remind yourself that you were meant to be there and to keep pushing forward. Diana or Luz Ann, anything else to add before we move to the next question?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all the sentiments here. I definitely have had my fair share of being the only one. I actually, I grew up in a very white town. There's this like really great saying that I don't remember, and I think I'm going to butcher it, but it's something like, are you sad or are you just surrounded by assholes? Or like, it goes like something like that. And I remember hearing that once, but not really thinking it applied to me. But now that like, something about like going through tech, I have a whole talk on like imposter syndrome and stuff, but finding your community is like one of the biggest things, right? I was so I had crippling insecurity throughout like middle school and like high school. And you know, I was surrounded by people that that othered me or made me feel different to them. There's no way, I'm not all, not like my whole high school was a terrible place to be, but I was surrounded by people who made me feel different just because of how I looked. And when I found this community of Filipinos, of women engineers, it was really, really awesome. And it really helped me persevere. Like even in school, or, you know, finding your Filipino club in school was really beneficial for me too. And yeah, finding my community was just like the #1 ingredient towards, you know, software engineering for me, at least.
Thank you, Diana. We'll have to hear your talk on imposter syndrome. Like, wow, you have a whole talk on that? Because I still need it. Not sure about you guys, but yeah, that would be great to hear at one time. So we'll have to have you back on again. Avery, do you want to ask the next question? Oh, Luz Ann, are you good? Do you agree with everybody? Anything else to add?
Everyone's talking about imposter syndrome, and it made me think of this one Zoom background that I have. So I don't know if anyone.
Oh my gosh, I want that.
Where did you get that one from?
That's so cool.
I looked for it on Google.
Nice. I've never seen that before. And I think
my
it's
gosh, I love
great Diana mentioned that. Charity, do you still have to head out, or are you okay?
Yes, is it okay if I turn over host to you?
Okay. Yes, Charity has to run around. She's always either reopening a company. She has 4 kids. I still don't know how she serves on multiple nonprofit boards and gives her time generously as much as she can for Faster. So thank you so much, Charity. If folks have questions for Charity, you can contact her. I know that, I forget if your LinkedIn was up. I want to give out your email, but that's always bad. CCNick48 at Instagram, right? People message you there. Okay.
Yeah, you can do that, or just find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Charity Nicolas there. So.
And everyone who has questions about the reopening, if I know some of
yes,
these are mostly
COVID
students
reopening,
here, but if your
safe,
parents are at tech companies and you have questions on health tech and safety, have them talk to Ate Cha. That's what everyone calls her. I always call her Charity. I'm like, she's also my ate as well. But thank you, Charity, for your time. And I'm going to take over hosting with Avery, and we'll dive into our other questions.
Thank you. You guys are awesome.
Give a round of applause,
yes.
Charity.
Thank you.
Bye.
So, did we not cover question 1 on our favorite things in tech yet? No? Otherwise, we can run a round robin that. No? I don't think so.
Yeah, I can ask it right now, actually. So for everybody, just like changing topics a little bit, what about your field in tech is like the most exciting right now that you want to share with everybody? I can also put a question in chat for
Whether it's your latest technologies, papers, business use cases, it doesn't have to be the one at your company. I'm sure there's a million things at say Amazon, right? Because I know it's really cool that Luz Ann gets to work on Alexa, but anything else that's really interesting. I work in AI, AR, VR, HPC, and I see really interesting stuff on mobile and iOS and front ends, because I used to do that, that I don't get to do all the time. So I'm just curious to know what in your field is like the most cutting edge or exciting thing that you see. So we'll do a round robin. We'll start with Professor Martinez.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess in my field or industry is a little, different because I can talk about 2 things. First, I am in the higher education industry, but the field that I'm interested in is computer engineering. So I guess maybe I'll talk a little bit about both of those. The first one is higher education. There's these days, there's also a lot of research going on and we're all scrambling and how to adapt higher education into fully online because especially with courses that traditionally needed to be physically taught, like those that like physics labs, or in my case, I actually teach a class, an introduction to electrical and computer engineering, and it has a lab component where students students, build just simple circuits, simple projects, and we've had to, really adapt that into an online class. But the way my school is teaching it right now is that we have hybrid format where half of the students come in the first half of the week, and then half of the students come in the second half of the week. So we are the research that went into that is that they had to do surveys into what is more effective in terms of student retention and in terms of for students retaining what they learn in class, and also especially when they have to do projects, that is very difficult to assess if they have to just build projects at home and we have to just observe over video how they're doing. So right now the higher education industry is doing a lot of research also into how to make education more effective with an online teaching format. In terms of my research interests, which is kind of different, I guess there is also the advantage of one advantage of being in academia is that you are kind of free to pursue your interest. What is most interesting to you in terms of doing research, doing readings on that subject, publishing papers on that subject, and in particular mine is in IoT. IoT has always interested me, and these days there's just so many IoT projects going on, especially with applying IoT in the era of pandemic, right? We see projects where you have, drones being built to automatically sanitize spaces like tables. Even I actually have a group of senior students right now doing their senior projects, trying to create like a remote controlled mechanism for opening doors, so that you don't have to touch any surfaces that you can in order to move around the building. And I also have a group of students who is working on like a social distancing applications that wearables that will let you know if you're too close to someone else. There's just so many projects that you can do with IoT. In terms of research, I am looking into looking at resolving conflicts between different applications, because in IoT, you have a ton of applications running on the same physical space, and most of the time the actuations, the things that they do to change the physical space can conflict. For example, one IoT application is trying to increase the lighting in a specific physical space, but another application which that are unaware of each other is trying to do the opposite. And so this is a problem in IoT that me and a couple of students are trying to look into right now.
Oh, awesome. How about Luz Ann, Diana, or Adrian? Anyone else want to go?
Yeah, so everyone always asks, since I'm on an elected team, they're like, oh, do you work with AI or ML? And I'm like, no, I don't do any of that stuff. Other people at Amazon work on that before it comes to anything I work on. But I do find AI and ML really interesting. And even though I don't work on it, like I think what really fascinates me is like the ethics around AI, ML, and how things like facial recognition don't always recognize faces of people of color, or especially Black people. And when it comes to like self-driving cars, if they don't see a Black person as a Black person, how are they supposed to avoid that incident? And yeah, overall, just like ethics and AI ML is really, really fascinating to me, and how important it is to make sure like all the data sets and everything you teach to the computer is equitable and equal.
Very cool. I also love Gina's answer because I didn't think you were going to mention anything with COVID. But that's really cool, both of you. How about Diana or Adrian?
I'm also like piggybacking off of ethics. I think that the work being done right now in data science and like finding patterns amongst data gathered from police stations and finding the racial disparities and trends that happen in different places around this country. I think that stuff is really interesting and super relevant.
Cool. How about Adrian?
So as a dev advocate, there's a little actually less time that I spend focused on a particular platform or project. But what this allows me to do is to see all the kinds of creative ways that we're using tech in our industry. So for example, dev advocates, we one of the parts of our job is to give talks. Usually we travel and go to these places and give talks around the world. And of course, now with the pandemic, that's all come to a halt. So what's been very interesting is to see the creative ways that we can now bring these events virtually. So yes, we've all done Zoom events like this one. We've all been on different kinds of video conferencing software. But the most amazing thing that happened this year because of this was that I got to participate and speak at a talk that was a conference held inside Animal Crossing. And that was just super cool to see. So somebody held a DevOps conference, had 10 people. The more closely related your talk topic was to Animal Crossing in general, the better. And so this person set up within a month, which is amazing for an event, had his island available. All the speakers were on his island, and we broadcast this conference on Twitch. And you may have seen it all, that like all the news outlets were talking about it, like this is ridiculous. And of course, there were other creative ways people spent it, right? People had weddings in there, people had birthdays in Animal Crossing. But I think that's super, super cool to see how tech is helping in these kinds of creative ways. That's something that was personally related to me. Another really cool thing I saw recently, or maybe in the middle of the year, was when there was that scare with some kids who possibly would have been deported because they were not, citizens. People rallied around and just used Google Sheets to try to find people who were able to go because they mandated that you had to be in school, like physically in the classroom, and they would switch spots with these international students so that they would not have to go home. And I thought that was brilliant. So Google Sheets is something we're like, oh, here's another spreadsheet, but to use it in that way was super, super cool. And then I think the most recent one was the guy who just wanted to build an app because he wanted to see which McDonald's ice cream machine was broken. So he reverse engineered the app. And now we have this map where you can check if the McDonald's within your location, your vicinity is broken or not. So I think with that, it's not anything specific, but it's just finding all these creative ways that people are using tech to either help people or just to bring a little bit more light into this time. And so that's been exciting for me this year.
Diana says her friend Rashik. Who's Rashik again?
I think I accidentally sent to just panelists, but Rashik is my friend who made the McDonald's thing. He literally was like, I literally did this as a joke. Like it was a joke. And then now he's in like The Verge.
Yep.
Like people want to do like interviews with him and he's like, I'm just a 24-year-old.
I just want my ice cream. That's all.
That's literally it. It's so funny. But yeah, he got like 2,000 Twitter followers in like 2 hours. It's amazing how the internet works.
Best name too, McBroken. If you want to check out McBroken.
I love the responses and how everyone has something really unique in COVID. I thought someone was just going to be like AI. Our exec panel room mentions AI. I was like, I work in this field. I am a data ethicist. I was going to write my next book actually on emerging tech, and I didn't want to use the word ethics. So at the time we were calling it, so my new title, latest title, is Creating Our Virtual Futures, Perspectives in Emerging Technology. So spatial computing, which is AR, VR, AI, and then blockchain, which is very interesting to me. But we went almost on, not not completely analog, but Adrian mentioning the whole thing about how do you utilize the technology, right? The Google Sheets thing. And it was a huge, most people know this, in my previous life before tech, I was an immigrant rights activist. So that's really cool to hear people are using even the most simple tools in terms of like the tech for good sort of space. Avery, do you want to ask the next question on our doc?
I was actually gonna go with one of the ones in like the chat.
Oh yeah, that
If you
works.
don't mind, yeah. So Lorenzo asked earlier at like what age did like everybody get into like coding and just like the engineering field in general? And like yeah, everyone else watching, just feel free to ask more questions in chat if you want.
Well, I guess when I was in high school, I didn't really think I was going to go into engineering. But between graduating high school and having to decide my major was when I got into computer engineering. It's not really, so it's really more electrical engineering, I guess. So I didn't get into it for like coding or anything like that. I started with, like being interested in electronics, and later on, that's when I got into coding. But yeah, it wasn't, like something that I thought I was going to go in. But once I got into the major, I found that it was something that really interested me.
Anyone else want to go?
So my high school actually didn't have AP computer science, so I didn't even consider CS as a career or anything I would pursue until I started college. And I did start as an electrical engineering major, and I wasn't super, like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, there was a long time in college where I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but my major is electrical engineering. But even though I'm not super interested in EE, like, what else am I going to do? Like, I don't know what else I would do. So I kind of just stuck with it. And then I did have to take one CS class. We learned C. It was like one of the first EE classes I had to take as a freshman. And I thought I didn't really have any thoughts about it, but I was like, maybe coding is like okay. But then when I got to like my second year and third year in college, I was like, oh my God, EE, I can't do this. I need to think of something else. So that's when I was like, okay, that one class was kind of cool. So let me take some more computer science classes. And yeah, it kind of just snowballed from there after I got the internship at Amazon. And I actually only graduated college, having taken like 5 computer science classes, and I'm a software engineer now. So I thought that was kind of cool. It is a little hard. I do think there's a lot of stuff that I don't know and I'm not as familiar with when like some of my coworkers talk about some things. So I do know like my knowledge is like a little lacking there, but like I'm still learning and I'm still able to succeed in my career despite that.
Oh, Diana and then Adrian.
Oh, can the question be repeated exactly?
Oh yeah, sorry. It's just like what age did you just get into coding and like the tech field in general?
The age I got into coding at, I was forced to do it in high school. Not really. Actually, yes, kind of forced to do it because it was kind of weird. It was like if you are, if you're good at math, then do AP Comp Sci, and it ended up not being the case at all because I was horrible at it. But it was literally 2012 when I saw all these other women engineers, coding and doing really cool things. And I made my first game using like JavaScript, and it was like this. I don't know if you guys played the Lilo and Stitch sandwich stacker game where like you were Lilo and then ingredients fall from the sky and you're like, I gotta stack it, and you gain points from how high it can be. I tried to make that with ice cream. It was like a very bare bones version of that, but that's really actually what got me into tech because I thought it was so cool. And I was 18 at the time.
Luz Ann loves that game. I have no idea what that game is, but I heard Lilo and Stitch and I thought that was super cool. And then Adrian?
I didn't write my first line of code until I was 20 years old. So that gives, I mean, I like to reference that we did dabble with the MySpace themes, but at the time I didn't really fully understand what was going on there. I just wanted to have a different theme than everybody else. So my first actual professional line of code was at 20, and that was during my software development internship at UNLV. It was only there that I really understood that I enjoyed the problem solving aspect of it and continued on in this career.
So I actually had to look this up for myself. I think for me, I remember when CSS floats were that came later. I coded in tables, so I think I'm a little bit older than Adrian, but I literally looked up, I'm like, when was GeoCities born? Like I remember getting my Apple LC2 specifically. So this is like the 90s, right? So throwback to this is like the best era of music, 1994-ish. And then we actually, and I don't know anyone else here totally didn't have this, but again, I'm from Silicon Valley, so we're very, very privileged. I'm reminded all the time in my community, I'm like, wow, I'm very privileged. But I had a class in CSS when I was 13 in 1999. So it was more than just like all of us in high school, right? So this is 17, changing like MySpace. LiveJournal was a thing. So I know Diana and Luz Ann and Avery, people don't know what LiveJournal is, but before Facebook, there was MySpace, and during I think the MySpace era, there was Zanga and LiveJournal, and all of my friends, they're all Chinese American, by the way. None of the Filipino girls I knew in school knew how to code, and I started my Filipino club, and I was getting mentorship from Stanford, but none of that was technical. It's always Chinese friends who would compete with me, like, but my LiveJournal's cuter than yours, and I know better CSS than you do, and you don't actually know how to write. So it was like a competition sort of thing. And then like Luz Ann, AP computer science, yes, the only girl that, and she was considered not popular, did not know how to dress. It was very cliquey, right? So she was taking classes at the community college, and I got really jealous. I was like, I want to do that too. So I actually bought, I think it was the AP computer science class, as I had friends who completely tested out of their first year at Cal because they took 12 tests, and one of them was CS. So I took it and I was like, I'm going to learn Java or C++. And my brother was at school at the time, and I asked him, I was like, is it like programming is really cool? But he's like, oh, but it's really hard. And I looked at it and I cried looking at JavaScript. So you have to remember 1999 to 2004. He was telling me how hard it was to program a calculator. And this is before Objective-C, before Swift, before Apple has all of these different tutorials on how to make a calculator in under 4 hours. And you have like an app you can launch in the App Store. It wasn't like that back then. So I opted out of computer science, and most people don't know that in my story. And my majors at Cal were ethnic studies, Asian American studies, political economy, and I transferred from UC Santa Cruz wanting to do that. I thought I was going to be IP and immigration law, but I was also involved heavily on campus. So I was a part of this group called Theater Rice, Modern Asian American Theater, and they were like, you know, HTML, CSS. We're a bunch of EECs, so what they call electrical engineering, computer science majors. We're going to teach you what was called the LAMP stack. So Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. I did not like MySQL and PHP. A lot of Facebook stack is built on that. I just liked HTML, CSS. So I thought I like front end, but there were no classes in that in computer science. And it still isn't there at Berkeley except for student nation classes. So when I actually was on the job working for Congressman Ro Khanna, and at the time, the field that was still being born, this is between 2011 to 2014, I didn't have a word for it. It was data science in campaigns that I was absolutely obsessed with. So the only job I ever wanted was, I think in 2011, and there were no boot camps. I didn't know what to do. I was like, well, I want to go back for computer science. I had tried the campaign circuit, but I couldn't get in. My technical skills weren't high enough. Then it was like I was asked to sort spreadsheets in Excel when I'm like, but I know HTML and CSS, and I know, so it didn't match like the different programs I was applying to for campaign work, for the Obama campaign digital. And then I ended up, I guess the last thing I'll say with this question is, working for Row, but I was coding HTML and CSS for their fundraising email campaigns. I wanted to do more of the data science stuff, which I had outsourced a lot of the data mining. So if you've seen 2016 and everything else that happened in the election, the way that the outcome that I did not want was I was trying to figure out for underrepresented voters who are Filipino American in the district I'm from here in Silicon Valley. So I had left, and I was surrounded by, at the time before I left the campaign, every major like CTO, founder of Silicon Valley, pioneer, and it was predominantly men. But when I would meet the women, so one of them was, I think it was Susan from the CEO of YouTube. I mean, there were not that many Filipinos, and there was Jocelyn Ding, who is also, Auntie Jocelyn was the highest ranking Pinay at Google at the time. And she was non-technical. So I was trying to find in my community, I was like, well, I was born and raised in Silicon Valley. Obviously I should be in tech. I always knew I'd go back. And the last little story here in terms of like knowing how to code, I interviewed with, and most people don't know, my classmate, Gina Rosales, who founded Pinayistas, used to be the head of marketing events at Google X. She was there, was a recruiter. I told my parents in 2011, oh, you know, my parents just want me to get a quote unquote real job, but I really just want to work on the Obama campaign and digital strategy, because I had heard the best engineers from Google and Facebook were there. So me writing code, I literally was like, okay, I'm going to interview and whatever, Google's just whatever. And I had no idea I was interviewing for HR. I was like, well, so what do you do? Oh, we interview really smart people that know how to code this and this. I was like, well, I was a front-end engineer. I know how to code this, even though my degree wasn't in it. And I was actually working in that field. And it's completely different. It wasn't tech. It was like the intersection of tech and, you know, civic tech, if you would put it at that. But, and at the time they called that digital strategy. So I think for everyone here, especially the women on there, it's like, well, I haven't coded, you know, I have to do computer science and things of that nature. Most of our data science panel, who were all Pinay last year, none of them majored, I think, in computer science. They were all pre-med at one point, and a lot of them didn't code until they were into their 20s and 30s. So please don't feel imposter syndrome like, oh, I didn't code until really late into my career. I knew how to code since I was young, but I wasn't actively doing it in my job as my core until I had left for Khan's campaign. Then it was like more of my central thing. So Avery, do you want to take the next question from the doc?
Yeah.
Or if there's any in the chat.
So since we have like a lot of students as like attendees, our next question would be like, what advice would you give to like young students and aspiring professionals who are trying to like get into the just the tech field in general, I guess, like the professional world, and especially like being a minority as well? I'll put the question in chat. Oh, sorry, it might take a while to think about the answer, but whoever wants to start, just like go ahead, I guess.
Well, I think maybe my fellow panelists will have are in better position to answer this, because getting into, going into an academia track is very different from going into like the industry. So, but what I can say is that, having taught students and then they go on and have gotten, pretty good industry jobs. I have former students who went to like work for Argonne and Honeywell, is that what they did when they were students was that they definitely focused on internships. That goes a long way into your resume and being hired with a good company. And also networking. And the other thing too is really, so it's not about grades, right? But grades reflect your work ethic is what I would say. So if you are hardworking and one of the ways that you can show that is through your grades, and also with doing projects on your own, showing that you are enthusiastic about the field, even if you're given homework and you do something just as kind of a hobby. One of my students got his current job just by mentioning, and it wasn't even part of the interview. He just happened to mention that, in my free time, I built this because, you know, I didn't have anything to do. And they got like, they just latch on to that thing that he mentioned. They're like, oh, so what is this project? You know, like, how did you come about? How did you decide on building that? And so that really showed like great interest on his part, that he would do something, that he would build something even without being asked by a teacher, build an app, mobile app, or any kind of, you know, something like a hobby, a side project. So this is just one of the few things that I can say in terms of, you know, getting into a good industry job.
Did we want Adrian or Luz Ann to answer, who are actually in the industry?
Sure. So something I would say was to retain yourself in tech or in your career, I think you also need to retain yourself. So like make sure you're like exercising self-care and getting the support you need emotionally and mentally, because I personally had a rough time transitioning into my job. And because I wasn't feeling super confident in myself, that affected my work. And so it's like really important to invest in yourself, and sometimes therapy and supporting your mental health can help with that. And then honestly, with them and talking to my friends, I realized that it wasn't just me, it was also kind of my manager who wasn't supporting me in the way that he should have. And you know, that's kind of hard to be in a position where you don't have a supportive manager who's like, he was very negative towards me. So it was, I think that contributed to like my low confidence. But anyway, so like making sure you take care of yourself, and then getting that external opinion, like, oh, hey, you know, this is my job. This is what my manager says to me. And then to have friends be like, you know what, that's not normal. It was kind of relieving. And then luckily I was able to get a different manager, or my manager ended up leaving to another team. And then a new manager joined our team who was a lot more supportive. And under him, I started to grow a lot more. So finding a support system inside and outside of work is very important, I would say.
I think one thing advice I'd give is, especially if you're thinking about a career in tech, when you hear tech, almost always you assume that it has to be coding. And sometimes that's just not what you're into, and that's okay. There's so many different avenues in tech that there's sure to be something that you can find that relates to something that you're interested in. So if you are an artist and you think there's no way that I can get a job in tech, that's wrong. There are so many places that you can go. It doesn't have to necessarily be coding. So it's always advantageous to know how to code, but it's not necessarily if I don't know how to code, I shouldn't pursue a job in tech. That's wrong. I love the initiatives that everyone is, you know, it's becoming more and more normal now to teach at a younger age how to code, and that's always good. But find what it is that you like to do, and then find something within tech that relates to that. If you're an artist, you could be someone who does level design or character design for a game development industry. If you like working with numbers or data, you can go into the data science route. That's under tech. If you do like building things, maybe you do something with the world of IoT, where maybe you're more focused on hardware rather than the software. There are so many different areas. It's worth it for you to try to research and see something in the huge umbrella of tech and find what it is that you would like to do, because I'm sure there is something there for you. The only other piece of advice I would give that has served me well time and time again is you have the choice to be extremely picky nowadays. If you find a company that doesn't gel with you for whatever reason, find another company, especially if you're going within the world of tech. You have the advantage. You can choose where you want to go. If you want a company that is as socially conscious as you are, follows the morals that you have, find and go to that company. At first, it might seem like I'll take anything because it is hard to find your first tech job. But with it becoming so prevalent now, you have so much choice that you shouldn't have to feel like you stick around. It's the same thing that Luz Ann said, where if you have a really bad manager, that can affect you and that can affect your career. So if you think it's something that you can get past, you can keep working on it. Otherwise, find a different place, find another job. There are jobs out there. You don't have to stick to something like that will further, put a halt on your career, or make sure you don't progress. So be choosy, find the thing that works for you, and there's a lot of opportunity out there for you to find something that really matches what you want to do. So that would be my best advice now.
Thank you. And before we have our lightning question round, which Avery will ask the question, I'll just say one last thing in terms of advice. So it was really, really, really hard for me to transition back into the industry as much as, and I have tons of privilege being like, I was born and raised in Silicon Valley. I know how to code since I was young. I have some of the best networks, like the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of people who own either Silicon Valley or electoral politics, that I was like, oh, so I should be able to just go and get a job at Facebook. Wasn't that easy. Even if I was like, I know the senior vice president that they invented Facebook ads. I applied for a marketing analytics position. I didn't even make it. I didn't even make the cut for interviews. And I spent a good amount of time rebranding myself. I think my resume at the time it read, I remember this, marketing communications. And then I was like, no, I really like design, UX, UI, because I was a front end engineer before. Then I rebranded that. And it was the same thing. So I actually pivoted more than most people, where it's like, well, people say they're quote unquote full stack. I never liked that term. It's like, well, I know all of what is computational design, from graphic to like actually coding it to like the AI, right? I know pretty much, I don't want to say like everything, but as I was like more like Luz Ann, where I didn't have all of the theoretical foundation. So I spent years trying to just teach myself, retrain. I watched a bunch of MOOCs. I got recertified, and focusing on AI, and writing a book on AR VR. That was a lot of my own self-exploration in doing that. And so what I encourage people here is my 1, 2, and 3 things is: one, always be learning. It's not just like, oh, I have this degree, so then it just ends there. No, it's not. You're a lifelong sort of learner. If you want to check out a really great book, Carol Dweck, out of Stanford, who's in the Department of Psychology, talks about growth mindset. I think the reason why I didn't want to major in computer science the first time, and I still grew up around my family and everyone else telling me things, not that it was negative to be like imposter syndrome, this is really hard, but I thought fixed mindset, oh, maybe I'm not the greatest at math, and so because it's really hard, I don't know if I could be good enough to be an engineer to computer science. That was my thing. So I said, oh, maybe I'll do biology, and I ended up in the humanities and social sciences, and I was so miserable. No offense, the job that I had in civic tech is like, people would kill for that job, but what I noticed was in my job I was so unhappy because I wasn't growing my technical skill sets I wanted. There were different trainings on data that the Obama campaign had, but I wasn't getting sort of that attention that I think I needed, or different ways to grow. So that'd be the second thing, is as you're thinking about always be learning, I think in the job and then outside of it. The third thing is really thinking about sharing your work. The last panel that we had earlier today, my very good friend Christian Kabuai, he came from actually the neighborhood next to me, and we have two completely different backgrounds that couldn't be more different. Where he talked about thinking, well, maybe I'll be good enough for call center, maybe I suck at math, and he's one of the best, actually world-renowned artists in by buy-in. He's working with Bobby Rubio from Pixar, was just talking about this, saying like, the span of his work, Dino's work, who's the Facebook Reality Labs lead designer on Facebook's Oculus or virtual reality avatar platform. Like, between those two, Bobby, and then the associate creative director at Adobe, and they're just three guys, right? Our women, between Abby, who's at EA. We also had who is it? Our D's from Lucasfilm, and then Adele, who is at Netflix, and before that worked for Jay-Z at Tidal, and the other person who's working at League of Legends and Riot. Each person has a huge sort of trajectory before they even got into their position. So don't expect right away that everything that you will code, like if you do a hackathon like me, is going to be the thing. My very first hackathon that I won a month or two after I left Rokana's campaign, I got offered a term sheet to raise money for venture capital capital, and I turned it down. Like, I was gonna go found this company with 3 people who I just met, and I got offered money and to start something. It ended up being, in my mind, my parents wondered why I did that. And I said, not every term sheet in the Valley is good. A lot of companies fail, and maybe it would have been an acqui-hire for the sponsor of that hackathon and these investors. And so I had to be really critical of myself. But doing that project, and I shared it on my portfolio, and I did that, it looked like crap. Like, everything that I had done until even my book was not my best work, but I kept coding anyway. I kept doing hackathons. I kept doing workshops and projects. And eventually you may get to a place where something like Dino or Christian said, like, they may have back then somewhere, if you find Angel Fire GeoCities, their earliest work, it isn't going to be your first thing that'll make it in, like, then you'll automatically get that job right out of college, that'll be the thing in your be all end all. As Adrian had said, a lot of us have changed jobs many different times. And what I've told even Professor Gina Martinez here is, like, my passion, as much as I love AI and data science, and I could be teaching at the grad school at Berkeley where I got rejected 5 years ago for a job, it's like, no, I'm still doing really cutting edge stuff with high performance computing, fighting COVID. I'm trying to get me and Christian's project on by buying in the pre-Philippine writing system preserved in VR and AI. There's a lot of stuff that's out there. So if you're thinking about building projects, the focus I may be doing for Berkeley is on open source, and you don't know how to do something, there's tons of people in the community in open source where even if you're like, yeah, I don't know how to code front end or an iOS app, and they don't offer that at my college or school, there's a lot of MOOCs right now. You can Google anything in the world. So please encourage, please encourage you all to go and do that. So share your work, continue to keep coding, and encourage you all to do lifelong learning. My last big thing is when you share, even if you're not sharing a coding project, funny story, I shared a conference picture of myself at Women Transforming Technology Conference because I was a member of Women Who Code. And it was a picture of Mary Lou Jepson, who used to be the VP of engineering at Oculus. Because of that picture, I had an interview at Riot Games, even though I didn't take the position. It was just because I was sharing on social media. So when I talk to you about rebranding, it's really important that you put yourself out there. My book deal came through LinkedIn because I'd written a blog post at NVIDIA's GPU Tech Conference talking about AI, AR, VR, and biotech. So even if you're like, oh, this isn't very technical, or it's not my greatest, portfolio, if you're a designer or a business person, share it anyway. People are watching you. I mean, there's so much now more with the internet than, like, I would say, like 1999, that people will attract. The way that I think of it is law of attraction. You'll attract more into the universe if you put yourself out there. So please don't feel shy with your work. And I noticed that from a lot of our students. So that was really long-winded, and I know we're over time. So Avery, do you want to take the last lightning round of question?
Yeah, sure. So just transitioning to more like a fun topic now, what would be everyone's favorite Filipino food?
Hamonada, I guess. I'm from, my family's from Cebu. So I could eat that stuff all day.
I'm basic, so mine's lumpia.
Basic is good.
My favorite dish is inihaw na bangus. I'll have that anytime, anywhere, no matter what. You just put it in front of me, I will eat it like a pig. So
I just ate Jollibee spaghetti because I felt very Filipino. I was like, I want senior sisig during my FASTERCon, during my day. And I also had a peach mango pie. So I'm going my quick and dirty Filipino fast food is always so good.
those are good. They're way better than the McDonald's apple pies. Don't at me.
So I think everyone went, right? And it's Avery. Oh, we have to give out the prize. I'm so sorry we're so Filipino time with this. I totally did not listen to Dino today, and we started late because his last night went pretty late. Avery, do you want to raffle off the prize based on a question of something someone said today, so that we can give out a $20 Amazon gift card? Whoever answers first gets it. It's something that you had to hear during the talks today.
Maybe just like what college does Gina teach at the moment?
Oh, whoever gets it first, you get a gift card. I think you're the only tenured, like, Filipino professor I know in computer science in the US.
Really?
I think so. I think maybe someone bid it to the chat pretty quick. You want this gift card to go away. Otherwise, we'll save it for the next event.
You know,
Maybe.
it's just, you know, I really hope I can encourage more people to go into academia, especially Filipinos, because whenever I search for published papers, scientific papers in whatever database, you know, like we are so underrepresented. And so I just hope, you know, we you know, more go into academia.
Awesome. I think we gave out 2 gift cards, by the way, Avery, in the last round. So we'll opt out this time. We'll do another one with PASAE when we have another workshop for
Okay.
whiteboarding algorithms. But anyways, thank you for your time. And thank you. I want to just mention to Gina how important she is as well. I think maybe it was someone from, who was it? SF State. They're not tenured though. And I tried looking them up. Someone had given me a name. And then Aldrin Montano, who's on our board, is a PhD student who got told like, yes, you can go back to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and become a professor. But that's literally it. I was like, there's no one. So we hope that, you know, some of you today, if you aren't inspired to go out and, you know, work in the industry, go into academia as well. I'll be teaching, although that isn't, you know, my career is not to be the CS professor. I think that's meant for someone else. I definitely encourage folks here to do that today. Avery, did you want to say? No?
Oh, well, somebody said Lewis College in the Q&A, but it says anonymous, so I actually don't know who this is.
Oh, so someone has to just reveal themselves so we can give out this extra card, whoever it is. No. Okay, they'll do it. So thank you again to Professor Gina Martinez, Adrian, Braganza, Tacke. Check out our book, Coding for Kids Python. Luz Ann from Filipinos at Amazon, and Avery, our partners with UC Berkeley PASAE. If you are still interested in the gift card, you need to go find Avery. He's on LinkedIn, message him. And be like, I am that anonymous person. I am going to end this stream today. For anyone that missed it, especially PASAE or any of the other students, Avery will email the YouTube link, or you can find it on Facebook, which we encourage you to all share. Thank you very much today. And my last thing is, if anyone else here is interested, FASTERCON Day 4, our last ones are supporting small business entrepreneurship and faster, fresh, high-tech entrepreneurship. All of that is on our Facebook. I think I have it. It's now new on our website, faster-steam.org. We updated Notion since we're still coding a lot of the back end for our new website. But check out the registration links there if you encourage other people to attend today. All right. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.